There he was, stark naked except for my Home Depot 5-gallon paint bucket covering his head, bumping into my bedroom furniture like a disoriented turtle. I stood in the doorway, golf club in hand, eerily calm despite the surreal tableau before me. My wife, Diane, was frozen mid-scream, clutching our 600-thread Count Egyptian cotton sheets to her chest. Sheets I had paid for with my hard-earned retirement savings. Jerry, she finally managed, her voice hitting that pitch reserved for when the cashier at Whole Foods tells her the organic avocados are $3.99 each. This isn't what it looks like. It was exactly what it looked like. After 37 years of marriage, my wife had a man in our bed, a man currently stumbling around with a bucket on his head because I caught it with his pants literally down, and he'd panicked, grabbing the first thing within reach to hide his identity. Really, Diane? Because it looks like you're screwing the tennis instructor from the country club while I'm supposed to be at my weekly poker game. I leaned against the doorframe, watching the bucket-headed man bump into our dresser. And you, Romeo? Finding the door would be easier without the bucket. I can explain, Buckethead mumbled, his voice echoing metallically. I'm sure you can. I'm also sure the police will find your explanation fascinating. That got both their attention. Police? Diane's face went from flush to pale faster than our property taxes doubled last year. Oh, yes, but not for the reason you think. I pulled out my phone and showed them the screen. I've been recording your little financial discussions for the past 3 months. The truth was, I'd suspected something was happening for almost a year. Not just the affair, that was new, but something concerning our finances. Large withdrawals, mysterious transfers, hush phone calls. When you've been a forensic accountant for the IRS for 40 years, you develop a nose for these things. I'd retired 2 years ago, but some skills never fade. What are you talking about? Diane clutched the sheets tighter, but her eyes, those were the eyes of someone who knew exactly what I was talking about. The Monroe County Housing Development Fund, the shell companies, the offshore accounts in the Caymans. I watched her face carefully. Ring any bells, sweetheart? Buckethead had stopped moving. Suddenly, he didn't seem so eager to find the exit. Let me back up. My name is Howard Millbrook, 62 years old, retired forensic accountant, golf handicap of 12, and until 3 months ago, I thought I was happily married to my college sweetheart. We had a comfortable life in our lakeside home in Ithaca, New York. Our 2 kids were grown and gone. Michelle a surgeon in Boston, Jason running his tech startup in Austin. Diane and I had settled into what I thought was a peaceful retirement, volunteering at the community center, taking weekend trips to Vermont, and hosting neighborhood barbecues where I bore everyone with my encyclopedic knowledge of craft IPAs. But retirement hadn't suited Diane. She'd grown restless, joining the board of the local arts council, taking up tennis lessons at the Lakeshore Country Club, and spending more time with her committee friends than at home. I didn't mind at first. We all need our space, right? But then I noticed the inconsistencies. It started with the credit card statements. Charges at restaurants on days she claimed to be at committee meetings. Hotel charges in Rochester when she was supposedly at overnight retreats. Then there were the changes in her behavior, the new clothes, the expensive perfume, the sudden interest in physical fitness, after decades considering the walk from the car to the mall entrance sufficient exercise. Classic signs of an affair, sure, but what really got my accountant's brain firing was the money trail. Our joint accounts were bleeding cash in ways that didn't make sense. Large withdrawals with vague explanations. When I casually asked about them, Diane would get defensive, accusing me of controlling her or not trusting her judgment. You've managed our money for decades, Howard. Now that I want to make some decisions, you're questioning me, she'd say, flipping her newly highlighted hair. Maybe retirement has made you paranoid. Maybe it had, but paranoia doesn't explain missing funds. So I did what any reasonable, suspicious, somewhat vengeful 62-year-old man would do. I set up a surveillance system that would make the NSA envious. Cameras hidden in smoke detectors. Voice-activated recorders in strategic locations. A GPS tracker on her SUV. And I started playing detective. What I uncovered was far more elaborate than a simple affair. The Monroe County Housing Development Fund doesn't exist, Howard. Diane was saying now, her voice steady but her hands trembling. You're making things up because you can't accept that I found someone who makes me feel alive. Oh, it exists all right. I pulled a thick folder from my briefcase by the door. It exists on paper, anyway. A very clever nonprofit organization, supposedly building affordable housing for veterans. Except no houses are being built. Are they? The money just goes in and then disappears, siphoned through a daisy chain of shell companies. Very impressive, actually. Buckethead had finally figured out how to remove his makeshift helmet. He was younger than I expected, maybe early 40s, with the kind of square jaw and artificially whitened teeth you see on those late-night infomercials for fitness equipment nobody ever uses. Mr. Millbrook, he said, trying for dignity while standing naked in my bedroom, I think there's been a misunderstanding. You're right about that, Chad. I enjoyed watching his surprise that I knew his name. You thought you were just having a fling with a wealthy retiree's bored wife. You didn't realize you were stepping into a federal investigation. Diane scoffed, but there was fear behind her eyes now. Federal investigation? Howard, you're retired. You're not with the IRS anymore. You can't just... I can't, but my former colleagues can. And they're very interested in the creative accounting happening at the Lakeshore Country Club's Charity Foundation. The one you joined the board of last year? The one that's been laundering money through fake construction projects? The one where Chad here is a financial director? Chad's face had gone from tan to ashen. Mrs. Millbrook, you said your husband was clueless. She was wrong about that. I said pleasantly, just like she was wrong to think I wouldn't notice $500,000 missing from our retirement accounts. $500,000? Chad's head swiveled toward Diane. That's right. My loving wife has been systematically draining our accounts to invest in your little housing scheme. Except the money isn't building houses, is it? It's building someone's offshore nest egg. Diane was pulling on her silk robe now, her composure returning. Howard, this is absurd. I made some investments, yes, but everything is above board. Chad has been helping me diversify our portfolio. Is that what they're calling it these days? I smiled and turned to Chad. You might want to get dressed. The FBI doesn't appreciate nudity during arrests. FBI. Chad scrambled for his clothes. They're not really coming right now. I admitted that was a little dramatic, but they will be. See, I've spent 3 months building a case, recording your conversations about moving money through the charity, documenting the wire transfers, following the paper trail to all those construction companies that don't actually construct anything. I walked to the window and looked out at our perfectly manicured lawn, the lake glittering beyond. Beautiful view, isn't it? Shame to think about viewing it through prison bars. Diane's voice turned cold. You're bluffing. You don't have anything. I clicked play on my phone, and her voice filled the room. No. We need to move it through the secondary account first, then to the holding company in Delaware before it goes offshore. Howard doesn't check those statements. I stopped the recording. I have hours of these. You two weren't exactly discreet when you thought I was out of house. Chad was fully dressed now, looking like he was calculating the distance to the door. Diane, you told me this was legal, that we were just taking advantage of tax loopholes. Oh, there are loopholes, and then there are federal crimes. I said, embezzlement from a charity, wire fraud, tax evasion, not to mention stealing from your spouse. That's not technically a federal crime, but it does make for a very compelling divorce case. I could see the wheels turning in Diane's head. She was recalculating, reassessing, looking for a way out. She'd always been good at that. Howard, she said, her voice softening, using the tone that won me over decades ago. I know this looks bad, but I was doing it for us. Chad convinced me these investments would triple our money. I wanted to surprise you with a windfall. Maybe I got carried away, but my heart was in the right place. Was it in the right place when you were sleeping with him too? I gestured to Chad, who looked like he wanted to crawl under our imported Berber rug. That was a mistake. I was lonely. Howard, you've been so distant since retirement, always on the golf course or in your study. I needed attention, validation. Wow, that's rich coming from someone who's barely been home this past year. I laughed. Save the manipulation for someone who hasn't been married to you for nearly 4 decades. I know all your tricks. I walked to the closet and pulled out a suitcase. Toss it on the bed. Pack what you need for a few days. I've already called Michelle. She knows you're coming to stay with her. You called our daughter? Diane's face flushed with anger. How dare you drag our children into this? I didn't drag them into anything. You did that when you decided to steal from their inheritance. Michelle is a surgeon. She'll be fine. But what about Jason? His startup is struggling. That money was going to be his safety net. Chad cleared his throat. I should probably go. Oh, no. Please stay, I said with mock hospitality. We still have so much to discuss. Like how exactly you persuaded 23 different investors to contribute to a non-existent housing project. Very impressive sales technique. 23? Diane looked at Chad. You said I was the only private investor. Chad's face went through a fascinating series of expressions. Well, there were a few others. A few? I pulled another folder from my briefcase. Marge and Harold Peterson, the Wilkinsons, Dr. Goldstein, the Hendersons, all members of the country club, all mysteriously investing in the same housing project, all contributing substantial amounts to a charity that's less legitimate than those emails from Nigerian princes. Diane's face had gone completely white. Chad? Is this true? Chad's eyes darted toward the door. I can explain everything. I'm sure the FBI will give you plenty of opportunity for that. I said, checking my watch. They're probably executing search warrants at the country club in your office right about now. You actually called the FBI? Chad's voice had risen an octave. 3 weeks ago. Turns out they take charity fraud very seriously, especially when a charity claims to help veterans. I sat down in the armchair by the window. But here's where things get interesting. Diane, did Chad ever mention his connection to Westlake Properties? Diane shook her head slowly. No. Westlake Properties is owned by Russell Thornton. That name rang a bell. Her face remained blank. Russell Thornton is a developer who's been trying to buy the land around the lake for years. The same land where your arts council successfully blocked his luxury condo development last year because it would destroy the character of the community. I could see the pieces clicking into place for Diane. Are you saying Chad here isn't just a financial director at the country club? He's Russell Thornton's nephew. And this whole scheme wasn't just about stealing money. It was about bankrupting the Arts Council by stealing their biggest donors. Without funding, they can't fight the development. Thornton swoops in, builds his condos. Everyone gets rich. I looked at Chad. Except the investors, of course. They just get scammed. Chad was edging toward the door now. This is all a misunderstanding. Is it? Because I have recordings of you and Thornton discussing exactly this plan. The affair with my wife? That was just a bonus. A way to get insider information on the Arts Council strategies. And access to our money, of course. Diane's manipulative softness had transformed into genuine shock. Chad? Is that true? Chad didn't answer. He was too busy trying to figure out if he could make it to the door before I could stop him. Don't bother running, I said calmly. There's an FBI agent sitting in a car at the end of our driveway. Has been for days. They're just gathering evidence before they move in. That was a lie, but Chad didn't know that. The FBI was indeed investigating, but they weren't staking out my house. Not yet, anyway. So now what? Diane asked, her voice small. Now we wait. The FBI will be executing arrests within the week. In the meantime, you're going to stay with Michelle, and I'm going to change the locks and the bank accounts. I stood up, and I'm going to file for divorce. Diane's eyes flashed. You can't just throw away 37 years of marriage. I didn't throw it away, Diane. You did. When you decided our vows and our life together were worth less than whatever Chad here was offering. It wasn't like that, she protested. It was complicated. Actually, it was very simple. You got greedy. You got bored. You made choices. I picked up her phone from the nightstand and handed it to her. Now you get consequences. Chad had apparently decided his best option was to play dumb. Mr. Millbrook, I swear I didn't know anything about any fraud. Diane approached me about investing in the fund. I was just the messenger. I laughed. Save it for your lawyer. Chad, I have recordings of you explaining exactly how to launder the money through the charity. Very detailed explanations. Actually, the FBI was quite impressed with your thoroughness. The color drained from his face. Recordings? That's illegal without consent. Not in New York State, when you're gathering evidence of crime. One-party consent, remember? And I definitely consented to recording you plotting to steal my money. I walked to the bedroom door and held it open. Now, if you don't mind, I'd like you to leave my house. Diane will be joining you shortly, just as soon as she packs her things. Chad hesitated, then slunk past me like a scolded dog. As he reached the stairs, I couldn't resist one last jab. Oh, and Chad, next time you're hiding from a husband, try the closet. The bucket wasn't your best look. After he left, Diane and I stared at each other in silence. 37 years of marriage distilled down to this moment of betrayal and cold fury. You've been planning this, she finally said. Setting me up? No, Diane, I've been investigating you. There's a difference. You set yourself up the moment you decided to steal from me and cheat on me. I gestured to the suitcase. Pack your things. Michelle is expecting you tonight. And if I refuse to go, I shrugged. Then I call the FBI right now, instead of letting you have a few days to get your affairs in order. Your choice. She stared at me, searching for the pushover she'd married, the man who had always given in to keep the peace. But that man was gone. In his place stood someone who had spent decades tracking financial criminals and finally turned those skills on his own wife. You'll regret this, Howard. she said quietly, reaching for the suitcase. When all the facts come out, you'll see you made a terrible mistake. I smiled without humor. I've made plenty of mistakes in my life, Diane. Trusting you was one of them. But this isn't a mistake. This is justice. As she began packing, I walked downstairs to pour myself a bourbon. My hands were steady, my breathing calm. Some might call it shock, but I recognized it for what it was. The cold clarity that comes with finally seeing the truth, no matter how painful. The game was just beginning. Diane thought she was clever, but she had no idea what was coming next. The housing scheme was just the surface. What lay beneath was a web of corruption that would shock our quiet lakeside community to its core, and my wife was right in the middle of it. And I had proof, every last damning piece of it. Little did I know that what I'd uncovered so far was just the tip of the iceberg. The rabbit hole went much deeper, involving people I'd trusted for years, schemes that crossed state lines, and dangers that would soon threaten more than just my marriage and finances. But for now, I sipped my bourbon and listened to Diane moving around upstairs, savoring the strange mixture of heartbreak and vindication. The wife I'd loved for nearly 4 decades was a stranger to me now. Or perhaps I was finally seeing the person who had been there all along, hidden behind a mask of domestic contentment. Either way, there was no going back, only forward, into a storm of my own making. The morning after I sent Diane to our daughter's place, I woke up to 37 missed calls and 16 voicemails. Most were from Diane, a few from Chad, and, interestingly, 3 from Russell Thornton himself. The last one caught my attention. Thornton was a local big shot who acted like he owned Ithaca, though he was really just another developer with more ambition and ethics and a comb-over that deserved its own weather forecast. I brewed my coffee, took it out to the deck overlooking the lake, and listened to Thornton's message. Howard, Russell Thornton here. Look, I think there's been a misunderstanding about some of Diane's investments. I'd like to meet, clear the air, man to man. Call me man to man. As if we were discussing a fender bender in the Kroger parking lot and not multi-million-dollar fraud. I didn't call him back. Instead, I drove to the Lakeshore Country Club, where I knew the board was having their monthly breakfast meeting. My membership had cost an obscene amount of money over the years, but today it would pay dividends. The club dining room was all wood paneling in old money hushed tones, with a view of the first tee where retired doctors in plaid pants practiced their swings. I spotted the board table immediately. 7 people looking important over their eggs Benedict. Thornton was at the head, naturally, his thinning hair arranged precisely to hide his bald spot. Conversation stopped when I approached. 7 pairs of eyes locked onto me with expressions ranging from surprise to unmistakable guilt. Howard. Thornton recovered first, standing with a too-wide smile. We were just talking about the charity tournament next month. Will you be playing? Depends, I said pleasantly, remaining standing. Will the proceeds actually go to veterans this time, or is that just a cover for your condo development slush fund? The silence that followed was as thick as a hollandaise sauce congealing on their plates. I don't know what Diane's been telling you, Thornton began carefully, but I think you misunderstood. Diane hasn't told me anything. I interrupted, but your nephew Chad has been quite informative. Or rather, his recorded conversations have been. Marjorie Whitfield, the board treasurer and my next-door neighbor for 15 years, gasped. Recorded conversations? Howard, what are you talking about? I pulled out my phone and set it on the table. Would you like to hear how your charitable donations have been rerouted through shell companies? Or maybe the part where Chad and Russell discuss using the Arts Council donor list to target vulnerable retirees. This is absurd, Thornton blustered, but his eyes betrayed him, darting to the exits as if calculating his escape route. And illegal. You can't record private conversations. One-party consent state. I reminded him, and the FBI doesn't seem to think it's absurd. They were quite interested in my findings. The word FBI rippled through the group like a stone tossed into still water. George Peterson, who'd been on the board for decades, went so pale I thought he might faceplant into his French toast. Now, I continued, pulling out a chair and sitting down uninvited. We can do this the easy way or the hard way. The easy way is you all cooperate with the investigation, return the stolen funds, and maybe, just maybe, some of you stay out of federal prison. The hard way. I shrugged. Well, I hear the food at federal correctional facilities isn't quite up to Chef Antoine's standards. What exactly do you want, Howard? Thornton asked, his voice lower now. I want what was stolen from me. From all the investors. Every penny plus interest. I leaned forward, and I want to know how deep this goes. Because my gut tells me the housing fund is just one piece of a much bigger puzzle. The looks exchanged around the table told me I'd hit the mark. This wasn't just about one fraudulent charity. You don't understand what you're getting into, Marjorie said quietly. There are complications. I'm a forensic accountant, Marjorie. Complications are my specialty. I turned back to Thornton. So, shall we discuss this here, or would you prefer a more private venue? Perhaps one with fewer witnesses? Thornton's jaw worked silently for a moment before he stood up. My office. 10 minutes. As he stalked out, the remaining board members stared at me with expressions ranging from fear to outright hostility. Only Patricia Winters, the newest board member, looked more curious and angry. Howard, she said as I stood to leave, be careful. Some things are better left alone. I gave her a thin smile. That's where you're wrong. Patricia, nothing is better left alone, especially fraud. Thornton's office was what you'd expect from someone trying too hard to impress. Leather furniture that had never been sat in, diplomas from second-rate universities displayed like Ivy League credentials, and a desk big enough to land a small aircraft. He was pacing when I entered, phone to his ear, voice hushed and angry. I don't care what it takes, just handle it, he snapped before ending the call. Turning to me with a forced smile, he gestured to a chair. Howard, have a seat. I remained standing. I prefer to stand. Suit yourself. He sat behind his monument of a desk. Look, I think there's been a misunderstanding. The Monroe County Housing Development Fund is a legitimate organization. We're in the planning stages for the veteran housing. Save it. I cut him off. I've seen the bank records. There are no plans, no permits filed, no land purchases. Just a daisy chain of transfers that eventually end up in offshore accounts. The question is, whose accounts? Thornton's smile didn't waver, but his eyes hardened. Howard, we've known each other for 15 years? I've always respected you. Smart guy, successful career, but you're retired now. Maybe enjoying your hobbies would be better than whatever this crusade is. My hobby is following money trails, I replied. And this one leads straight to you, Russell. You, Chad, and apparently my wife. He leaned back, steepling his fingers. Diane is a remarkable woman, very persuasive. The implication hung in the air between us. Are you suggesting my wife seduce you too? I kept my voice level. Thornton chuckled. No, nothing like that. But she has vision. She sees opportunities where others don't. Like the opportunity to steal from our retirement accounts. Invest, he corrected. She invested in a high-return opportunity. An opportunity that doesn't exist. He spread his hands wide. Not yet. These things take time. Development is a long game. And money laundering? Is that a long game too? I place a folder on his desk. Because that's what's happening here. The charity accepts donations, which get funneled through construction companies that don't build anything, then through a series of shell corporations, until the money vanishes into accounts in the Caymans and Panama. Thornton didn't touch the folder. You have an overactive imagination. No, what I have is decades of experience tracking financial criminals. I tapped the folder. And what you have is a problem. Because I'm not the only one with this information now. The FBI has it too. For the first time, uncertainty flickered across his face. You're bluffing. Special Agent Marcus Rivera. Look him up. He's leading the investigation. That was true. I had indeed contacted the FBI. What Thornton didn't need to know was that the investigation was still in its early stages, with Agent Rivera taking my evidence seriously, but moving cautiously. Thornton's face underwent a series of calculations before settling on conciliatory. Howard, I think we gotten off on the wrong foot. There may have been some creative accounting, tax strategies that pushed the envelope, but nothing criminal. Stealing money is criminal, Russell. So is wire fraud. So is charity fraud. Strong words. He drummed his fingers on the desk. What if I could guarantee that your money, every penny, is returned to you with interest? Would that satisfy your concerns? My concerns go beyond my personal finances. Of course. A man of principle. His tone was patronizing. What about the other investors? If they were made whole as well? I studied him. You could do that? Return all the stolen money. Let's call it a business decision. Cut our losses. Return the misdirected funds. And admit guilt. His smile tightened. Let's not get carried away. A settlement with no admission of wrongdoing. Standard business practice. This isn't a civil lawsuit, Russell. This is a federal investigation. Investigations can be redirected with the right incentives. He named a figure that made my eyebrows rise despite myself. A consulting fee for your expertise in helping us reorganize our financial practices. I almost laughed. Are you trying to bribe me? To obstruct a federal investigation? I'm offering you an opportunity to resolve this situation amicably. For everyone's benefit. I reached for my phone. I should record this conversation too. I'm sure Agent Rivera would find it fascinating. Thornton's facade cracked. Put that away, he hissed. You have no idea what you're dealing with. Howard, this goes beyond me, beyond the club. Enlighten me. He shook his head. I can't. But trust me when I say you're poking a hornet's nest. One that could sting more than just your bank account. Is that a threat? A word of caution from one businessman to another. He leaned forward. Take the money, Howard. Go enjoy your retirement. Travel. Play golf. Forget about all this. And let you continue stealing from others? Not going to happen. His expression hardened. Then you leave me no choice. Before I could respond, his office door opened and a man I'd never seen before entered. Tall, broad-shouldered, with a blank expression of someone who solved problems with their fists rather than their words. Mr. Thornton, the man said, eyeing me suspiciously. Not now, Jenkins, Thornton said quickly. But I'd seen enough. Your muscle? Really, Russell? That's your solution. Thornton waved Jenkins away. A misunderstanding. Mr. Millbrook was just leaving. Actually, I said, I think I'll stay a bit longer. Jenkins might want to hear about the investigation, too. After all, obstruction of justice charges could extend to anyone helping to cover up these crimes. Jenkins looked uncertainly between us before backing out of the office. You're playing a dangerous game, Thornton said once we were alone again. No, I'm enforcing the law. You're the one playing games. I picked up my folder and headed for the door. Expect a call from Agent Rivera. Soon. As I turned the handle, Thornton called after me. Diane knew everything. Howard. Every detail. In fact, many of the ideas were hers. Are you prepared for her to go to prison, too? I paused but didn't turn around. If that's where justice leads, yes. Cold, he commented. Very cold. No, I corrected him. Just clear-eyed. Something I should have been years ago. When I left the country club, I drove straight to a coffee shop downtown, neutral territory where I was unlikely to run into any club members. I needed to think. Thornton's reaction had confirmed my suspicions that the scheme went deeper than just a housing fund, but his warning had unsettled me more than I cared to admit. I just ordered my Americano when my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Parking garage. Level 3. Blue Honda. 10 minutes. Come alone. Cryptic parking garage meetings weren't exactly my style, but I was in too deep to back out now. After checking that my recording app was working, I drove to the downtown garage and made my way to Level 3. The blue Honda was parked in a corner, partially hidden by a concrete pillar. As I approached, the passenger window lowered, revealing Patricia Winters from the country club board. Get in, she said, glancing nervously around the nearly empty garage. I hesitated. Please, Howard, we don't have much time. Cautiously, I slid into the passenger seat. Patricia was still in her board meeting clothes, a conservative Navy suit that screamed old money despite her being the newest board member. I'm taking a huge risk talking to you, she said without preamble. If they find out... Who's they? She ignored my question. The housing fund is just one branch. There are others. Education grants that never fund actual schools. Environmental initiatives that exist only on paper. All funneling money through the same network of shell companies. How do you know this? Patricia's hands tightened on the steering wheel. Because I was brought in to legitimize it. My background is in nonprofit oversight. They recruited me 6 months ago to join the board, lend credibility. It wasn't until I started asking questions about the financials that I realized what was happening. And you didn't report it? Her laugh was bitter. To whom? The local police? The board president is the police chief's brother-in-law. The mayor? He's received substantial campaign contributions from club members. I was looking for solid evidence when you showed up this morning. I studied her, weighing whether to trust her. Why are you telling me this? Because you've already contacted the FBI. Because you seem like someone who won't back down. She pulled an envelope from her purse and handed it to me. And because of this. Inside were photographs, surveillance photos of Diane entering various buildings over several months, meeting with people I didn't recognize, exchanging envelopes and packages. They've been watching her, Patricia explained, making sure she stays in line. When she started getting cold feet a few weeks ago, threatening to go to the authorities, they increased the surveillance. That's when I realized how deep this goes. Cold feet. That didn't sound like the Diane I confronted. She didn't tell you? Patricia looked genuinely surprised. She came to me about a month ago, said she'd made a terrible mistake getting involved, said she was scared, that things had gone too far. I advised her to gather evidence, document everything. I flipped through the photos, my mind racing. If what you're saying is true, why was she still with Chad yesterday? Still defending the scheme? Fear, probably. These people don't take betrayal lightly. She tapped one of the photos. See this man? Frank Daniels. Ex-military. Now, private security for several board members. He's not someone you cross. The implication was clear. Diane might have been pressured to continue. Threatened even. It complicated the neat narrative of betrayal I constructed. Where did you get these photos? They were sent to me anonymously last week. A warning, I think, to show what happens to people who ask too many questions. She checked her watch nervously. I need to get back before they notice I'm gone. Patricia, if what you're saying is true, you could be in danger too. She nodded grimly. I know. That's why I've been documenting everything. Bank transfers, meeting minutes, conversations. I have copies in a secure location. You should take this to the FBI. I was planning to, but then you showed up this morning, guns blazing. A hint of a smile touched her lips. Seemed like fate. I handed her my contact at the FBI. Agent Rivera. Call him directly. Tell him everything you've told me. She pocketed the card. There's one more thing you should know. Howard, the reason I'm putting myself at risk like this. She hesitated. My brother was scammed by a similar operation in Rochester 3 years ago. Lost everything. Killed himself 6 months later. The raw pain in her voice left no doubt about her sincerity. I'm sorry. I said inadequately. Don't be sorry. Just help me stop them. She started the car. Now go. We shouldn't be seen together. As I got out, she called after me softly. Howard, be careful. They'll come after you next. Patricia's warning proved prophetic sooner than I expected. That evening, as I was reviewing financial documents at my dining room table, my security system alerted me to movement on the property. The cameras showed 2 men in dark clothing approaching from the lakeside, where there was no fence. I called 911, but knew help would take at least 15 minutes to arrive at our somewhat isolated location. Then I retrieved my old hunting shotgun from the gun safe, loaded it, and positioned myself where I could watch both the front and back entrances. The men tested doors and windows methodically before one of them pulled out tools to work on the back door lock. Amateur hour. I'd upgraded all the locks after Diane left. When the lock held, they moved to a window. That's when I flipped on exterior lights, illuminating them like actors on a stage. Police are on their way. I called through the door, and I'm armed. They froze momentarily, then bolted back toward the lake. I got clear images of their faces from the security cameras. Evidence to share with Agent Rivera. 20 minutes later, 2 police officers arrived, took my statement, and promised to patrol the area more frequently. But their lack of urgency told me all I needed to know. They weren't taking this seriously. Or worse, they were part of the network protecting Thornton and his cronies. I spent a sleepless night, shotgun within reach, jumping at every creak and groan of the house. At dawn, I received a text from Michelle. Dad, Mom's gone. She left during the night. No note, nothing. Diane had vanished. Just disappeared from our daughter's apartment, while Michelle was on overnight call at the hospital. Her suitcase remained, but her purse, phone, and jacket were gone. Had she run? Been taken? The timing, right after the attempted break-in my house, couldn't be coincidental. I called Agent Rivera immediately. My wife is missing, I said without preamble, and I think it's connected to the case. Mr. Millbrook, his voice was cautious, professional. We can't jump conclusions. Adults go missing for many reasons. Someone tried to break into my house last night, and now Diane is gone. That's not a coincidence. He was silent for a moment. I'll look into it. In the meantime, do you have somewhere else you can stay? Somewhere safe. I'm not leaving. I said firmly, this is my home. And if they want to intimidate me, they'll have to do better than sending a couple of amateurs to jimmy my locks. This isn't a game, Mr. Millbrook. No, I agreed. It's fraud. Possibly kidnapping now. And I'm not backing down. After hanging up, I called Jason, made sure he was safe at his home in Austin, then started making a list of everyone connected to the country club board. If Thornton thought he could make Diane disappear to silence her, he had seriously underestimated my determination. But as I worked, a nagging doubt kept surfacing. What if Patricia was wrong? What if Diane hadn't had cold feet? What if her disappearance was part of a plan? Her plan! I pulled out the surveillance photos again, studying them more carefully. In one, Diane was clearly nervous, glancing over her shoulder. In another, her body language with Chad was argumentative, not romantic. And in several, the same man, Frank Daniels, according to Patricia, appeared in the background, watching. My instincts as a forensic accountant had always been to follow the money, but now I needed to follow the people too. Who was Frank Daniels? What was his connection to Thornton? And most importantly, where was Diane? I spent the morning making calls, reaching out to old colleagues from the IRS, calling in favors. By noon, I had a dossier on Frank Daniels that made my blood run cold. Former military intelligence. Dishonorable discharge after allegations of prisoner mistreatment. Multiple assault charges, all mysteriously dropped before trial. Current employment. Security consultant for Westlake Properties, Thornton's company. This wasn't just about money anymore. This was potentially about life and death. Diane's life, despite our broken marriage and her betrayal. The thought of her in danger because of my investigation filled me with a cold rage. Whatever she had done, she didn't deserve to be harmed. I was loading my car with supplies, planning to search some of Thornton's properties myself, when my phone rang. Unknown number. Howard Millbrook. I answered. 8 o'clock tonight. The boathouse at Henderson Point. Come alone or she dies. The voice was distorted, electronic. Let me speak to her. I demanded. A pause, then Diane's voice, shaky but clear. Howard? Don't. The call cut off. I stood frozen beside my car, my mind racing. Call Rivera? He'd insist on setting up a proper operation, which would take time. Go in alone? Potentially suicide. Do nothing? Not an option. In the end, I chose a middle path. I called Rivera, told him about the call, and said I planned to meet the demands. But I'd wear a wire. He objected strenuously. But I was a civilian. He couldn't stop me. At least let us set up surveillance, he argued. No. If they spot anything unusual, they might hurt her. I was firm. I'll wear the wire. If things go south, you'll have evidence. That's the best I can offer. Reluctantly, he agreed, and 2 hours later, I was fitted with a nearly undetectable recording device. Don't be a hero, Rivera warned as his technician checked equipment one last time. Your only job is to get information and get out alive. Both of you. I nodded, though privately I had every intention of being a hero if necessary. Diane might have betrayed me, but she was still the mother of my children, my partner of nearly 4 decades. And despite everything, I was about to let her become collateral damage in this war with Thornton. As darkness fell, I drove toward Henderson Point, a secluded area at the far end of the lake, known for its luxury homes and private boathouses. One of those boathouses belonged to George Peterson, the country club board member who had nearly fainted at the mention of the FBI. Interesting choice of location. Was Peterson involved in Diane's disappearance, or was his property being used without his knowledge? I parked at the public boat launch half a mile away and walked the rest, staying in the shadows, alert for any sign of surveillance or a trap. The night was cool, a light mist rising off the lake, obscuring visibility. Good for me, but also good for anyone waiting to ambush me. The Peterson boathouse loomed at the end of a long dock, dark and silent. I approached cautiously, one hand on the gun concealed under my jacket, the other holding a small flashlight. Hello, I called as I reached the doorway. I'm here, alone as requested. Silence. Then a faint sound from inside, a muffled cry. I pushed the door open, sweeping my flashlight across the interior. The beam caught something that made my heart stop. Diane, tied to a chair, a gag in her mouth, her eyes wide with fear above it. I rushed toward her, all caution forgotten, only to freeze at the sound of a gun being cocked behind me. That's far enough, Howard. Chad's voice, but different, harder, colder than a country club tennis instructor I confronted yesterday. I turned slowly. Chad stood in the shadows, a pistol pointed steadily at my chest. Behind him, Frank Daniels leaned against a support beam, watching with detached interest. Let her go, I said, my voice calmer than I felt. This is between you and me. Chad laughed, an ugly sound. Oh, it's between all of us now. Your wife has been very uncooperative, very eager to tell her story to the feds. I glanced at Diane, saw the bruise darkening her cheek, and felt a surge of rage. You hit her? She needed persuasion. Daniel spoke for first time, his voice casual, as if discussing the weather rather than assault. What do you want? I asked, though I already knew the answer. The evidence, Chad said. All of it. The recordings, the bank records, everything you've given the FBI. It's too late, I said. The FBI has everything already. Not everything. Daniels pushed off from the beam and approached me. Not the recordings from your house. Not the conversations with your wife about her role in all this. They thought Diane had confessed everything to me. Interesting. And if I give you what you want, what happens to us? Chad shrugged. You get on a plane. Take a long vacation somewhere, without extradition. The money's already in accounts in your names. Enough to live comfortably for the rest of your lives. And if we refuse? Daniel smiled thinly. Then only one of you leaves here alive. And it won't be you, Howard. A classic good cop / bad cop routine, with the stakes raised to life and death. But there was something off about the whole setup. Something that didn't quite add up. I looked at Diane again, tried to read her eyes. Was she truly a victim here? Or was this elaborate scene just another manipulation? Untie her, I said. Let me talk to her. No games, Chad warned, but nodded to Daniels, who moved to remove Diane's gag. Howard, she gasped as soon as she could speak. They'll kill us both. They don't care about the evidence anymore. This is about silencing us. Shut up, Daniels snapped, backhanding her across the face. That's when I saw it. The brief flash of metal under the sleeve of Diane's blouse. Not handcuffs or rope burns as I'd expected, but the gleam of a watch. An expensive watch that I'd never seen before. And suddenly, the pieces clicked into place. The elaborate kidnapping scenario. The convenient timing of her disappearance. The insistence that she'd been trying to come clean. It was all theater. And I was the only audience member who didn't know the script. How long have you been working with them, Diane? I asked quietly. Her eyes widened in genuine surprise. The first real emotion I'd seen from her. What? The watch. It's new. Expensive. Not something a kidnapped victim typically gets as a parting gift. Chad's gun wavered slightly. What are you talking about? I'm talking about the fact that my wife isn't a victim here. She's a participant. I took a calculated risk and moved closer to Diane. The question is, who's playing whom? Daniels looked between Diane and Chad, his expression hardening. What's he talking about? I don't know, Chad stammered. He's trying to confuse us. I reached down and grabbed Diane's arm, pushing up her sleeve to reveal a Patek Philippe watch worth at least $30,000. New jewelry, Diane? From your kidnapper? The look that passed between Diane and Chad was brief but damning. You idiots, Daniels growled, his gun now trained on both of them. This wasn't part of the plan. And just like that, the balance of power in the room shifted. I was no longer the target. At least not the only one. What plan? I asked, though I was beginning to see the outlines clearly now. Ask your wife, Daniel said coldly. Ask her about the money that's already left the country. Ask her why Thornton is currently on a flight to Panama. I looked at Diane, really looked at her, seeing not my wife of nearly 4 decades, but a stranger. What have you done? Her face transformed, the fear melting away, replaced by a hard defiance. What I had to do, what you were too blind to see needed doing, which is securing our future. She straightened in the chair, no longer playing the helpless captive. Do you know what your precious government pension would have gotten us? Barely enough to maintain the house and club membership. I wasn't about to spend my golden years clipping coupons and shopping at Walmart. So you stole. From our accounts. From others. I invested, she corrected, echoing Thornton's words from earlier. In opportunities. In fraud. She shrugged, a gesture so callous it made me wonder if I'd ever known her at all. Call it what you want. It worked. Until you started playing detective. Chad lowered his gun slightly. Diane, this isn't helping. Oh, shut up, Chad, she snapped. Your part in this is done. You serve your purpose. The hurt on his face might have been comical under different circumstances. But you said... I said what you needed to hear to keep you useful. She turned back to me. The money's gone, Howard. Transferred offshore yesterday, right after you sent me Michelle's. $30 million. Our cut of the entire operation. Our cut. I repeated. Well, mine now, I suppose. She smiled, and it was like watching a mask slip, revealing the calculating stranger beneath. I was going to bring you in on it, you know, after everything was secured, give you the chance to join me. But then you had to play the righteous crusader. I stared at her, feeling a peculiar mix of horror and grudging admiration. The elaborate planning this would have required, The cool calculation? You used me. My investigation was your distraction. She nodded. While everyone was focusing on the housing fund and Chad's clumsy money laundering, the real transfers were happening elsewhere. By the time anyone thinks to look at the Scholarship Foundation accounts, the money will be long gone and untraceable. Enough? Daniels cut in, his gun still steady. This changes nothing. We still need the evidence destroyed. Actually, I said, finding my voice again, it changes everything, because now I know who the real mastermind is. I looked at Diane. It was you all along, wasn't it? Not Thornton. Not Chad. You. Something like pride flickered across her face. Took you long enough to figure it out. For a forensic accountant, you're remarkably blind when it comes to your own wife. The affairs, I said, the pieces continue to fall into place. Chad, Thornton, they were just covers, ways to get close to the money. And to keep an eye on the operation, she confirmed. Men are so predictable. Show them attention, make them feel important, and they'll give you anything. Access, information, blind loyalty. She glanced dismissively at Chad. I turned to Daniels. And what's your role in all this? Hired muscle. Insurance, Diane answered for him. Frank makes sure everyone stays in line. That no one gets cold feet, like you supposedly did when you went to Patricia Winters. Diane laughed. Patricia, another useful idiot. I fed her just enough information to make her think she was uncovering something on her own. She's probably calling your FBI friend right now, directing him to exactly the evidence I wanted to find. The elaborate nature of her deception was staggering. Layer upon layer of manipulation, using everyone, me, Chad, the board members, even federal investigators, as unwitting pieces in her game. So what now? I asked. You kill me? Make it look like I discovered the fraud and was eliminated by Thornton's people. That was the original plan, she admitted. But I'm offering you a choice, Howard. Come with me. The money's enough for both of us. We can disappear, start over somewhere new. For a brief, insane moment, I actually considered it. Not out of love or loyalty, those were long dead, but out of a perverse curiosity to see how far she would take this game. And if I refuse? She nodded to Daniels, who adjusted his grip on his gun. Then only one of us leaves here tonight. It was a moment of truth, literally. My life hanging in the balance based on a decision I never thought I'd have to make. Betray everything I believed in and flee with my criminal wife, or stand my ground and likely die for it. I looked at Diane, searching for any remnant of the woman I'd married, the mother of my children, my partner through decades of life's ups and downs. There was nothing familiar in her eyes now, only cold calculation. I choose justice, I said finally. I choose to stand for what's right. Diane's face hardened. Then you choose death. She nodded to Daniels, who raised his gun just as the boathouse door burst open and a room filled with armed FBI agents. Agent Rivera at their lead. Federal agents. Drop your weapons. In the chaos that followed, several things happened at once. Chad dropped his gun immediately, raising his hands in surrender. Daniel swung his weapon toward the agents, only to be cut down in a hail of gunfire. And Diane, my Diane, pulled a small pistol from beneath her chair and aimed it squarely at my chest. You were wired, she hissed, recognition dawning in her eyes. The whole time, I confirmed, every word recorded. For a moment, I thought she might pull the trigger anyway, a final act of defiance. Instead, she lowered the gun slowly, a strange smile playing at her lips. Well played, Howard, she said softly. How do you think the story ended? Let's discuss in the comments. Subscribe and stay tuned for more curious stories.